So, hey guys, welcome to the channel, and today I am going to talk about the Nintendo Switch, which as of me recording this video on the 4th of March 2022, turned 5 years old, which is a pretty big achievement. It's been doing pretty well for itself all over the world. But it also makes me pretty painfully aware of my own mortality. I mean, I was 5 years old when I got my first Nintendo and started playing games in general and became a massive nerd. So what I'm going to do is I've taken out all my games and I've taken out all my Switches because I have a couple of them. Too many than I should have, to be honest. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk about this stuff. Hopefully I have some at least like semi-interesting stories about some of this stuff. Otherwise, it's gonna kind of feel like a big waste of money, so let's just get right into it. So this is my original launch model Switch that I got back in 2017. Right now it has the Split Pad Pro controllers on it, which have a really nice D-pad, way better than the normal Joy-Cons at least, although this was the one that came with grey Joy-Cons. And what's kind of funny about me making this video is, originally I didn't even have any intention of buying a Switch. I did not want a Switch. You know, I did follow its kind of like development, like from when it was called the Nintendo NX, and I did follow Breath of the Wild from when it was first revealed at one of the E3s, I think. Like E3 2014 is when they showed the like open world footage and Link using a really futuristic looking bow. I remember that. But I had no interest in getting this, but what happened, and the reason I got this Switch, is actually because for my birthday, the year that the Switch actually came out in 2017, a couple of my friends came together and like organized a birthday party for me, a surprise one in Pizza Hut, and at the very end of the night they like slipped me this envelope with like a Triforce drawn on it, and it turned out they'd actually pre-ordered me Breath of the Wild from Amazon, which I really appreciate. I mean, at the time it must have been a big investment, like kids basically in college, and they all came together, like a group of them, to pre-order me this game, so I have some pretty great friends and I really appreciate that still. But anyway, because they did that for me, that nice kind gesture, I felt like if I didn't get a Switch it would be kind of a waste. I mean, they already went to all that effort. So I got this around the 20th of March, not actually at launch exactly, because there was a lot of like difficulty like procuring these at the time when they first came out. And also I was meant to be studying for like my final A2 exams at the time, so it was kind of bad timing in a way. Well, no, actually, not really, because my exams were like over a month after this came out, but still I was kind of meant to like give the illusion that I was preparing for them in like some capacity, which to be honest I wasn't. But so yeah, I had to pre-order this from the Nintendo website, and I didn't pre-order it to my own house. Like, I didn't get it delivered to my own house. What I did is one of my friends who pre-ordered Zelda for me, I asked him if he could like let me deliver it to his house. So this was delivered to his house. He brought it into school one of the like following days, or like college I should say for consistency. He brought it into college and I unboxed this thing in school, which is actually, I think it's the first time I've ever like unboxed a console. The only time I've ever unboxed a console in school, college, sorry. And like I put on the screen protector and everything in college. Like I sat there, I remember sitting there and like doing all this stuff. And so that's pretty memorable. I'll never forget that. So the first game I ever saw being played on a Switch in person was Fast RMX. Now, this didn't actually get a physical release. I got this like, this case made from someone called Nintendo in the States and got it ordered over here. Simply because I liked this game so much, I wanted like a memento of it. And that is Fast RMX, a futuristic racing game by Shinen Multimedia, who also did Nanostray on the DS, which is a really good shoot-'em-up, or like an STG, whatever you want to call that genre. And there's actually, I think some of the music in this game is reused from Nanostray too. But basically, it is just that. It's like if you've played Wipeout or F-Zero, especially more so F-Zero in like the hero mode in this game, where you can take damage and blow up. It's kind of like inspired by those games, I guess. And at the time, because I don't think Mario Kart had come out like right at launch, this was basically the racing game, so it had a very active online around launch. And man, I put so many hours into this game. Also, on my friend's Switch, the guy who I had my Switch delivered to, on his Switch, we used to like sit in college and like play Fast RMX in tabletop mode, so we'd like, we'd swap the Joy-Con around and we'd all play the game. It was a very nice communal experience, and I'll never forget that. It kind of took me back to playing a Mario Kart DS, obviously on the DS, with DS Download Play when that came out. So like I said, I put a lot of time into this game, about 50 to 60 hours. That's including like when they did an update for this game in September of 2017, which added a new cup. I think it might have added some more stuff, but I can't really remember. But yeah, I play this online like a lot. I remember one of the levels, like Mori Park, I think it was called, or like Mori Park. It was one where you go through tunnels, and I had to try like 100 times plus to beat that on time trial. For some reason I couldn't beat the time trial of that track for ages, and that drove me nuts. But I have a lot of memories with this game, a lot of really cool levels. I really like, I think it was Neo Kyoto, or like Neo Kyoto I think it was, and like Antarctica and Iceland. Some really cool levels that still like stand out in my mind, and some of the music is really sick in this game. You should really give the soundtrack a listen sometime if you can. I believe it's all on YouTube. Oh yeah, another memory I have with this game is like the day I got my Switch and I was on the bus back home. I remember sitting there playing Fast RMX, and there was a kid watching me, like next to his mum, like asking her if he could get a Switch like for his birthday or Christmas. And so I feel kind of cool knowing that I might eventually become like a formative memory for some kid who was sitting on the bus that day, who may have become a gamer because he saw me playing the Switch. I don't know, he seemed like a pretty young kid. So another game that was a launch title for the Switch, the launch title for the Switch, that I still have the original copy of, that was graciously pre-ordered for me by my friends, is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And inside this box, I still have the instruction manual for the screen protector and like the wipe for wiping the screen. And this is one of the things that struck me about the Switch boxes when I first opened this. Like, the really nice artwork on the interior. Like, the 3DS had some games which had reversible covers, and not all of them. So with the Switch, it felt kind of novel to me. Like, it felt like every single case had its own kind of different artwork, and that was really neat. Like Mario Kart 8 had instructions inside the box, etc. But this game is also another one I put about 50 to 60 hours into. I played it a lot around launch, but like after 2017, or like after my exams that year, like May, June, I kind of like moved on to other games. But this is a great kind of open world sandbox style game. It's not like my favorite Zelda game. I'm not gonna lie, in terms of 3D Zelda games, I'm more of a 2D Zelda fan anyway, but in terms of 3D, I think I might actually prefer Skyward Sword to this, which I know is a pretty controversial opinion, but Skyward Sword HD was really fun. Anyway, so yeah, just like 3D games in general, 3D Zelda games, because I was getting a bit ahead of myself with Skyward Sword mentioning that, but it does translate, like, because I know this game was like originally they designed it as like 2D overworld, like the original Legend of Zelda, to kind of conceptualize it. And when you play the game, it still uses the classic Zelda progression where you, you know, you get like a new item or a new weapon, and that allows you to do like new things in dungeons, or like in this case, because this game doesn't really have dungeons besides like Hyrule Castle, and I don't really count the shrines. In this game, you would use like, for example, your bombs, or bombs are they're pretty much a staple of Zelda, but you know, you'd use like magnetism, or you'd stop time to unlock new areas, or like trigger events that would allow you to progress in the game. And this being an open world game, the progression is also very open. So you're not tied to a story as such. There is a story, but I find that I didn't actually follow it very much. I didn't do a great deal of it, besides like the initial bit and maybe some of the champion stuff. I didn't beat any of the Divine Beasts. I did get to them, but I didn't beat them. Mostly I just kind of dicked around in the shrines, and also just like had fun with the physics sandbox element of it, but very memorable. And I'll never forget my time playing Zelda at launch. As far as launch games go, pretty solid. So a game that came out in the summer of 2017 that I was really excited for, because I'm a big fan of this series, and I feel like it's kind of been stagnating for a long time. Even now, I think it's kind of gone back to stagnating a bit. A game I was looking forward to was Sonic Mania, that came out in the summer of 2017. And man, this, I put a lot of hours into this for a Sonic game, like 40 hours at the time at launch. A lot of that, like 10 hours, will probably be me just like replaying Stardust Speedway on time trial. No joke, I actually did replay that level many times. I replayed that level a lot. But this game is, in my opinion, the best 2D Sonic game since, I would say, Sonic Advance on the Game Boy, the first one. the Game Boy Advance, sorry. This has so much content. I mean, like, even ignoring all the unlockables and stuff in Sonic Mania Plus, which is what this box is, because originally Sonic Mania didn't get a physical release, it was digital only. It has like 12 levels, most of them remixes of previous like levels from previous games, which is kind of a problem I had, because the new stages in this were really fun and really memorable, and there were only like 4 of them, so what's that, like a third of the game? So I don't know, it kind of sucked. That was a bit of a bummer, and I really feel like that if they had gotten a Sonic Mania 2, which they might still get, then there would be more like new content in it. But and also at launch this was missing some stage transitions, which was kind of strange. But in terms of the gameplay, you know, very fluid. The drop dash was the new mechanic they added, which originally I didn't use it very much, but once I figured out how to use it, I just didn't stop using it. And the music, like T-Lopes, right? It was T-Lopes who did the music. I feel like that's his name. I don't know why I'm forgetting right now, but the music in this was just godly, like chef's kiss. 10 out of 10. Ridiculous, like absolutely ridiculous how good the soundtrack in this game is. But yeah, if you're a Sonic fan or just a 2D platformer fan in general, I think you will very much enjoy this game if you haven't played it yet. I know that in the summer of 2017, I had a massive blast playing this game. I also played a lot of, speaking of digital games, I played a lot of Minecraft when it came out on the Switch in 2017, but I didn't really play Minecraft after 2017. I kind of dropped off on the Switch version. I dropped off on Minecraft in general. So when I went off to university, I bought Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with my first student loan, which I shouldn't admit to that, but you know, obviously a very productive use of that government money instead of like maintaining my living buying Switch games. That's how it should be. But I got a lot of playtime out of this, mostly on the online. I played the online on this a lot, and I unlocked a lot of the stuff because I played so much of the online. I put a lot of hours into this. And I also played a lot of this with friends, like split screen on, you know, in tabletop mode or just on the TV. I think this is the only game that around launch I like consistently docked my Switch for, because I predominantly play my Switches in handheld. I mean, even to this day, there are a couple of games which I played mostly docked, but like I very rarely use the dock. But this game, I would say, is the definitive Mario Kart, and because they're adding more content to it now in 2022, which is wild. I mean, it's basically Mario Kart 8, Mario Kart 9, Mario Kart 10. It is the Mario Kart now. They're just gonna keep adding more and more to it, which is pretty absurd. But yeah, if you haven't played Mario Kart 8 Deluxe somehow, I mean, you gotta get on that, because it is just such a fun party game. So now we move on to 2018, and 2018 was a fun year for me. It was very much an RPG year for me, I would say. Yeah. This is probably the big release of 2018. I'm actually skipping a lot of games that I got in 2018 because this, for me, is my favorite Switch game of all time thus far, 5 years into the Switch's life cycle. Octopath Traveler. Man, I love this game. This is my most played game on the Switch. I've put 145 hours into this. Probably more because of how much I died to the secret final boss. Although I think the Switch probably isn't lying about my playtime. I think about 20 of those 145 hours is just trying to beat the secret final boss, because he's really difficult, and I tried to do it without a guide, which was fun. I definitely couldn't do that nowadays because I don't have the time, but at the time, I had all the time in the world to just sit down and play this game for hours at a time. I mean, I remember I would play this in tabletop mode, so it'd be kind of like a mini TV. I had like an 8-bit Super Nintendo controller, like a wireless one, because it's really good for this game. This game is such a throwback to 16-bit JRPGs. I would just sit there and I'd listen to the music for... I would actually sit there and just like sometimes just doze off and listen to the music while playing it for like a good few minutes or even an hour at times. I mean, what was the city called? Stone Guard. The music for Stone Guard in this game, so beautiful. I would just sit there and listen to it. But in terms of the gameplay, you know, very much like a classic RPG. It has a job system, which I very much like, which is a big problem for me, because any game with a job system, any JRPG with a job system, I should say, I end up putting way too much time into. I mean, Dragon Quest 6, Dragon Quest 9, this game, you know, anything that implements it in such a way that you can basically, you know, you can feasibly like unlock every single class and unlock like all the best skills for those classes. This is one of those games. So that's what I did for every character pretty much. And I also did everything in the game. You know, I found every single like treasure chest in the game. I started with Therion, the thief, so he can open the purple chests around the map. So in a way I kind of saved myself a lot of trouble, because if I had unlocked him later on, I wouldn't have been able to use his skill to open those chests. And he pretty much stayed in my party the whole time, because I think his story was probably my favorite. The kind of story of betrayal by his best friend, you know, he kind of gives off this impression of being a hard-ass loner-like thief, but in reality he's a pretty sentimental guy. So I really liked Therion's story. I liked a lot of the stories in this game. One of the things people complain about is the lack of kind of banter, or not banter, but communication between the characters. The stories never really cross in a very meaningful way, like, you know, Dragon Quest IV, where, you know, the final chapter is all the heroes come together and then, you know, beat the game. But in this game, besides like kind of the pub banter that you get at certain stages, they never cross paths besides the final, like, secret final boss, although they never actually interact in that bit. It's just like taking lore elements from the final chapters of every character's story, and then combining them to explain how you get to the final boss, secret final boss. But Jesus, what else can I say about this game? I mean, I played it. It took me a long time to beat this game, I'll say that, yeah. It took me like over a year. Yeah, just because I was playing it on and off. But I would come back to it, and it was almost like I'd never left it. It was just one of those games that's really easy to like pick back up again. And in terms of JRPGs, if you really like classic, you know, turn-based RPGs, you can't go wrong with Octopath. I think it's very solidly built. I wouldn't say it's the most outstanding JRPG ever, you know, it's nothing genre-defining, but it's definitely, in terms of the Switch library, in terms of Switch exclusives, which this is not anymore because it's on PC too, but at the time it was a Switch exclusive, and I would say it was worth getting the system at that point for this game only. Now that you can get it on PC, if Octopath Traveler is what sways your decision to get a Switch, but you can play it on PC, I'd probably just play it on PC, but fantastic game. I can't really say much else about it. Yeah, I don't know if you guys can see this, but when I went to have my dinner, I spilled a bit of water on myself because I was in such a hurry to come back and finish recording this. The sacrifices I make for you guys. But anyway, to get back to the topic at hand, the game that I probably play the most of in 2018 after Octopath Traveler is not a very new game at all. In fact, it's pretty old. A pretty seminal JRPG, and that is Sega Ages Phantasy Star, not just the regular Phantasy Star, the Sega Ages port. It is, yeah, it's pretty much I believe it's a port, or it might just be emulation, but it's got a few like bells and whistles, because obviously it was worked on by M2, who are just wizards of emulation in general, and of going way like above and beyond in terms of like these old kind of projects. Or rather these projects where they kind of take old games and re-release them for new consoles and whatnot. I mean, they also did Sega Ages Virtua Racing, which upscaled that game and added online multiplayer. It was nuts. And I mean, they even went the extra step for some of the games on this on the Game Gear Micro, which I used to have, but I no longer have. But this game is no exception to that. It has a lot of new stuff added to it that I think a lot of newcomers to RPGs, or just people who are kind of more interested in newer RPGs, would appreciate. There is a Sega Ages version where you get more experience and you get more money, so it makes the kind of like initial grind of this game a bit more palatable for, I would say, quite a few people. Although me personally, hardcore gamer, have to go for the classic version. Although even in that, what they added is an auto mapping feature for the dungeons. So, you know, in the past you would have to sit there with graph paper or like one of those maths books and draw the squares in, which to be honest I really like doing, and that's why I like games like Etrian Odyssey and, you know, like the Metroid games. I draw my own maps for those too. I still like doing that, to be honest. But with Phantasy Star, you know, that's probably the biggest draw of this game, that, you know, the overworld is just standard JRPG, although it's very unique. At the time that this came out, I would say that this was kind of breaking the mold in a few ways. It wasn't a traditional kind of like medieval JRPG, it's futuristic, it's sci-fi. And it has, you know, a female protagonist, which for the time is also pretty unusual. You know, Alice is pretty much like a girl boss, you could say. But no, what I like about this, also it has a party system, which Dragon Quest didn't get until Dragon Quest 2, and even then wasn't that great until Dragon Quest 3. Final Fantasy obviously had that from the start. But what I really like about this is the kind of different locales you go to. You start off on kind of a green planet, Parma, then you go to Matavia, which is a desert, and then you go to Dazorus, which is like a frost world. And, you know, the way that you travel between the worlds, you get your own ship, you know, you get different vehicles throughout the game. Something else about the Sega Ages version is it has a monster compendium. So every time you fight a monster in the game, it records it in kind of like a Pokédex style thing, basically, which kind of might appeal to people who like Pokemon and kind of want to branch out a bit. But the dungeons in this game, they are pretty standard. They're just kind of, to anyone kind of playing this game for the first time, they might seem pretty kind of basic. You know, they're just kind of, they are 3D dungeons. I mean, that might seem impressive to people who are playing this for the first time, but I think what's more impressive is the fact that they achieved those 3D dungeons at the time that they did. I mean, when did this game come out? It doesn't say on this box, this is also a recreation box, by the way. This game didn't get a physical release. I also had this made by Nintendo in the States. So it's a pretty cool box. And I have the manual for, it just fell out, but I have the manual for Mario and Yoshi in it for some reason. I'm getting distracted. Yeah, so the dungeons in this game, they are just like, I mean, even you can see them on the box, I guess. They're 3D dungeons, which might not seem that impressive to people nowadays, but this game came out at a time when JRPGs were not kind of the juggernaut of a genre that they are now. I mean, most of them just had kind of standard, you know, the way that the overworld is 2D overhead, the dungeons would also be 2D overhead. So this game kind of breaking the mold a bit by having the overworld be 2D, and have the dungeons being these 3D kind of marvels of programming by Yuji Naka, who was also the brain behind Sonic and Balan Wonderworld, the classic game Balan Wonderworld. But yeah, the battles in this game are, you know, they are first person, and what's really cool is the fact that all the monsters in this game, which you know, a lot of them are kind of based on like creatures from mythology, like, you know, you got Medusa and stuff. They all have animations like during the battle, and the battle scenes in the backgrounds are totally different. You know, it's not like the first Dragon Quest, where just like a small box pops up, or, you know, Dragon Quest 2 where it's like a black screen. I bring up Dragon Quest a lot when I make comparisons to JRPGs. I just really like the series. But no, this has fully detailed battle backgrounds. The overworld is very rich and vibrant. There are 3 different overworlds, so there's a lot of like variety there. The dungeons are very cool. I find them very cool, even though they might appear a bit primitive nowadays. And it's kind of a shame that in the Phantasy Star series they never truly went back. They never went back to this. And then obviously after the 4 main Phantasy Star games, we got Phantasy Star Online, which is totally different. It's an MMO. But as far as classic JRPGs go, this is a great game. This is actually the first time I beat it. I did try playing it in the past. I wouldn't say I beat it necessarily because of the auto mapping. I would just say that I really appreciated the addition of the auto maps. Something that is pretty cool about this game, actually, shit, that's a good point, sorry, excuse the language, but something that's really cool about this particular version, or rather this kind of particular classic emulation / port thing, the CRT filter on this is weirdly, I mean, I don't know if this is just me, but it seems weirdly like well made. I think the reason for that is because this has like a bubble effect on the CRT, so I think with a lot of games like these emulation ones, when they give you the option for scanlines, it's just scanlines. But this like recreates a really like kind of authentic CRT screen feel, like a bubble TV feel I should say, which is something I really appreciated actually. So yeah, if you want to play a classic JRPG on the Switch, if you want to get into the Phantasy Star series, because the Sega Mega Drive Classics collection has 2, 3, and 4, if you just want to have a good time, play Sega Ages Phantasy Star. This is probably one of the best games on the Switch that I played in 2018, and it says a lot. This is actually the game that I chose to talk about over a few other games from 2018, I guess. So now we're going to talk about 2019 Switch games for a little bit, and this game is one that I was excited for actually. I know I said that I didn't want to get a Switch, but I knew from the beginning that I would probably end up getting a Switch for this game. at the very least. I think this is actually the very first game announced for the Switch. You know, when it was the NX, I think this was the game where the developers said that we will put this on the NX. And I remember the Nintendo Direct where they announced that this was coming to the Switch. It combined features from the PS4 version and the 3DS version, which I imported when it came out because I had to play that game, and I don't really understand Japanese, but I had a great time playing it for like 30 hours. This game is just fantastic. Dragon Quest XI X. Dragon Quest XI S. Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. It is a mouthful. I just call it Dragon Quest XI, but holy crap, man. This game was worth the wait, you know? I went through a few stages of denial with Dragon Quest XI on the 3DS, because that game is, honestly, I think it might be one of the best games on the 3DS. In terms of visuals, it looks really nice. And the content in it is just insane. Actually, some of the stuff from the 3DS version that was put into this was not done quite as well in this version as it was on the 3DS. But where do I start with this? I mean, the instant they announced this in that Direct, I lost my shit. I was like the soy kind of like, you know, like that meme of like the guy watching the Star Wars trailer and like going crazy. That was me when they announced this. I could not wait. And I didn't pre-order this, but I did get it the day it came out, so I actually still have the receipt in here. I don't know if I can show a bit of it. Okay, that should do. So that's the receipt that I had in the box. I still have it in the box, because this is just one of those things, and I kind of take games pretty seriously, man, so I had to keep that. But, you know, this has the visuals of the PS4 version, which looks absolutely gorgeous, albeit a bit downgraded because the Switch is not as powerful, but it has the content of the 3DS version. And I believe there's some other things too, like on the 3DS, your party members followed you around, which, you know, seems pretty standard, except I think in the PS4 version that wasn't a thing. So this added that back. It had the visiting the past worlds, the village. I think they call it like Talkington in this version. It's been a while since I played, to be honest. It was like the Yoshi village in the 3DS version, but you could go to the worlds of Dragon Quest 1 through 10. Except in the 3DS version, the visuals in those past worlds was a pretty accurate reflection of how those games were when they were released on their original kind of respective consoles. On this, they're all just 2D, which is a bit of a bummer. That's the other big thing, the 2D and 3D. So this game, like the 3DS version, gave you the option to play in either 2D or 3D. I think the 2D in this is based on like the mobile Dragon Quest games, because it doesn't look as good as the 2D version or the 2D mode on the 3DS version. That's something I definitely noticed, but I don't care, man. I mean, they added that to this game. That's pretty insane. The PS4 version did not have that. This game, there's a reason it's called the Definitive Edition. I know it's on PC now, and it's coming to the Steam Deck. And I don't know if that version on the Steam Deck is going to have like visual enhancements to bring it kind of more in line with the gorgeous PS4 version. But you know, when the PS4 version came out in English, I was actually really tempted to get a PS4 that week because Spider-Man, I believe, came out on the PS4 in that same week. Man, I get sidetracked really easily. Oh yeah, I can't believe I'm forgetting this, but because of this game, this is the game that made me buy the Switch Lite. The Switch Lite is actually something that I really wanted from the instant the Switch was, the instant I got a Switch, actually. One of the problems I had with the Switch from the beginning was the lack of a good D-pad, which, you know, I play a lot of games that kind of require, like, a decent D-pad, you know, platformers, and I even like playing shoot-em-ups with D-pads. So the lack of a good one on the original Switch, I mean, I get why it didn't have it because of the Joy-Cons and them having to be like relatively kind of analogous in like button layout, I guess. But the Switch Lite was just a godsend because I feel like the engineering was a bit better. The fact that you don't have to worry about the Joy-Con sliding in and out and any potential wear. It's all just one handheld like a Game Boy. It's a weird thing, you know. I feel like a lot of people don't talk about this, but it's something I feel very strongly about. The vents. So these like grills on the vent, on the original Switch, they're very kind of thin. But on the Lite, they're nice and thick. which felt like a big kind of engineering. It was a small thing, but it's something I really appreciate. And I just really like the feel of the Switch Lite. I think for someone who likes playing, you don't want any gimmicks, you just want to play a game, sit down, have a good time. As long as you don't get like hand cramps very easily, then it's a great console. And I'm so glad that I bought a Switch just for one game, Dragon Quest XI. I did get it just to play that game. So there's some weird banging going on outside, and you might notice that I'm looking a bit different maybe, and it's actually bright. My lighting has changed, and that's simply because I realized I started recording way too late yesterday, so I had to start again. Anyway, continuing off of yesterday's discussion, one game that was announced at E3 in 2019 that I picked up at the start of 2020 actually, but it was something I was really looking forward to because I'm a fan of this series. That is Collection of Mana, which is a compilation of the first 3 games in the Seiken Densetsu series. So you've got Final Fantasy Adventure, or Mystic Quest as it's called in this country, you've got Secret of Mana, and you've got Trials of Mana, which for a very long time only had a fan translation, which was pretty good. I think most people would probably swear by the fan translation if they played that first, but, for the amount of content you get in this, it is a hell of a deal. Like, this retails for about £20, but it's a really funny story about how I actually got this game in the first place. I got it, so I always had the intention of buying it. Basically, whenever there's an E3, I have like a spreadsheet on my computer, and I type in like the names of games that I want to get or stuff I'm interested in. So this was on that list, or that spreadsheet. Basically, after a night out at the start of January with my friends, I woke up on a friend's sofa. I was really hungover, and I just decided, you know what? Today's gonna be the day that I actually go and pick this up when it came out physically. So that's what I did. I went to game in my kind of sorry state. I picked this up and I went back home, and I started from the very beginning with Final Fantasy Adventure, which I did have a copy of that on the Game Boy in German, so I can't really appreciate that in its fullest. But on this, you can get it in basically a multitude of languages actually. Every single one of these has several language options. And what can I say, man, this is my second most played title on the Switch in general. After Octopath Traveler, which is 145 hours, this is 95 across 3 games, so, averaging about 30 hours per game, but in reality it was about 10 to 15 for Final Fantasy Adventure, about 50 for Secret of Mana, for reasons, and Trials of Mana is actually, it's a damn good game, but it's very succinct. It's a very kind of compact game. It's about 30 hours from start to finish, and that's after doing basically all the extra content, which, it's not a modern action RPG, so it's not going to have a huge amount of post-game content as such, but in terms of getting the secret classes using the seeds, item seeds and stuff like that. So, particular thoughts on these games. Well, I'll start with Secret of Mana actually, because that's the thing I have the most kind of familiarity with since childhood. I think, when I was a kid and I used to emulate Super Nintendo games, this was a game that back in the day, Secret of Mana, people used to say it's one of the best Super Nintendo games, and in my opinion, I totally disagree. I think it's aged quite badly. For one thing, something that I noticed going from Final Fantasy Adventure straight into Secret of Mana is the combat feels very weird. Like, when you hit things with weapons, it doesn't always feel like you hit them, It doesn't feel very direct. And the magic is really easy to spam. I think 99% of the bosses in this game, I just spam magic continuously, with the exception of kind of the Mana Beast at the very end, and some of the early bosses, you have to kind of attack them physically because you don't have magic yet. But the thing I hate the most about Secret of Mana is the weapon grinding. So every single character, they can equip all the weapons, but you have to grind the weapon levels. You don't level up the characters level up, In all 3 games, the characters level up, but this doesn't have the same kind of skill point system as the first game, or the kind of, the system of the 3rd game, which offer a bit more customization. In this, you level up, but the customization as such comes in how you level up the weapons for every individual character. So what I did kind of stupidly is I kind of committed to leveling up every single weapon for every character to level 8.99, which if you've played this game you will know that that is not just a Herculean task, that is nigh on impossible. And I quickly realized after a lot of grinding that this is the opposite of fun. You know, I love grinding. You know, that's why I like JRPGs so much. I just love the progression you see when you grind, and you know, your character gets kind of noticeably stronger. But in this game, that's why I didn't like the grinding, because the combat feels so weird that the grinding doesn't feel like it has much of an impact, if you know what I mean. If anything, I would say if you play this game, level up the weapons to about level 6 or 7. You know, I got all of them to level 8, and then I didn't bother with 8.99. But the magic is what you should really grind. So that's just like a big kind of thought I had on my mind. But in terms of the game, you know, the story is, it's good. It's kind of classic whimsical fantasy story. It has a bit of a bittersweet ending. You know, all the Mana games have some kind of bittersweet element in them. It's kind of like Dragon Quest in that way. Again, another Dragon Quest comparison. But if you think of how Dragon Quest games have a lot of like kind of tragic or kind of sad elements in them, but it's a very kind of colourful world, and the Akira Toriyama kind of artwork makes it very distinctive. Mana's very much the same way. You know, it has very distinctive characters. It has Flammy in the second and third game. Obviously different Flammies. It has, you know, the first game, because this is a Final Fantasy spin-off, which is really funny that the first game is a Final Fantasy action RPG spin-off, and nowadays, I mean, Final Fantasy 16 is pretty much like a hack-and-slash action RPG, right? I think all of them are action RPGs now, even 7 Remake, even with the classic mode. But, you know, considering it started off as a Final Fantasy spin-off, you know, you'll notice in the first game that it has chocobos, it has Moogles, which actually, Moogling is kind of a status effect, you turn into a Moogle, but they are in Secret of Mana as well, and I'm pretty sure they're in Trials too. So it has those characters, and it has some other stuff too that's not really coming to mind immediately, but I noticed that, you know, after Secret of Mana, they very clearly try to make Mana its own, or Seiken Densetsu its own kind of series, separate from Final Fantasy. So Secret of Mana, it has a nice story, I would say. The world is very colourful, that's one thing I'll say. It's a gorgeous game, and the music is fantastic. It's very, it's not kind of as standard as the music in Final Fantasy Adventure, or even Trials of Mana. It's very kind of ambient, it's ambient music, so if you want to study, and you want to listen to some ambient game music, then Secret of Mana is where you should go. But that's pretty much it. I put a lot of time into it. It's actually one of the games that I played most docked, you know, on the TV. I don't really do that for Switch games, as I said earlier. I play mostly in handheld, but Final Fantasy Adventure is one I played in handheld, and I love that game. That is, I think it's, you know, I'm a big Game Boy fan. I've beaten, you know, over 50 Game Boy games, at least on the original Game Boy, the DMG. And I would say that Final Fantasy Adventure is easily in my top 5, even in my top 3 actually, along with kind of Super Mario Land 2 and Castlevania the Adventurer games I really like. I would say Metroid 2 actually I would put ahead of Castlevania the Adventure. Shit, I gotta really think about that list. But yeah, Super Mario Land 2 is my favourite game, Metroid 2 I would say is probably second, and Final Fantasy Adventure, you know, on a console, on a system that is, it has RPGs, the Game Boy, you know, it has Pokemon, it has Saga, Final Fantasy Legend, it has like Great Greed, like some of the Kemco games like Sword of Hope, but it really benefits from having Final Fantasy Adventure. If I had to explain it to someone who hasn't played it before, in fact, if I had to explain all these games to someone who hasn't played them before, or anything like them, they are basically like Zelda-style games, except you'll notice that you have a level, so you level up. And in Final Fantasy Adventure at least, whenever you level up, you can allocate skill points to certain stats, so you can kind of customize your build. Not that it really matters in Final Fantasy Adventure, because you always have like, or usually you have like helper characters with you, who you can basically abuse, like the main female character, who's actually a pretty huge part of the story. I'm not going to spoil her role. She can basically heal you just like constantly, and it's not going to use up your MP, so you can just use her as much as you want. But man, very interesting story in this game. For a Game Boy game in kind of limited text, limited space on kind of the cartridge, it has a lot of dialogue, relatively speaking, and it's a very kind of tragic story. There's a lot of loss, a lot of death, and a lot of falling. The main character falls a lot. You fall at the start of the game, and you fall at like several points in the game, which is like a trend I noticed. Has anyone else noticed that who played this game? But the music, god, the music is just phenomenal. Endless Battlefield is like the main overworld theme. That, honestly, the first time I heard that, it kind of brought tears to my eyes, and I still like get emotional whenever I hear it. And then the second overworld theme, In Search of the Sacred Sword, That's just a fantastic tune. And when they remade this game on the Game Boy Advance, they did kind of Sword of Mana. I don't think they did as good a job with the music. I think on the original, the music really stands out, despite the limited technology that they had at the time. What else can I say about this, man? No, just a phenomenal game. I really have to collect my thoughts someday, but if you haven't played Final Fantasy Adventure and you like the Mana series, by all means, go for it. Trials of Mana it's a culmination of those first 3 games, I would say. You know, it's vibrant, the music is just incredible. One thing I like about the collection of Mana is you can listen to the music on kind of the main menu, which is something I did a lot. Especially the sailing theme, when you kind of ride on Vuskav or Buskabu, whatever you want to call him. Splash Hop, I think that's what it's called. That music is really good. I love that music. But man, very short game, 30 hours. I know that might not sound short to people, but I think for what it is, for how packed this game feels and how much you do, it felt like it was over in a second for me. Visually great, musically great, the story. I love the characters in this game. I love that you can choose between characters. So I really love my boy Hawkeye and his thing with like Risu, Riz. I know it's like Risu in Japanese. And I like Kevin's story too. I like the Beast Man. You know, you've got kind of Charlotte, you've got Duran. Who else do you got? And you've got oh god, I forget her name. The kind of the magician. I was gonna call her Jessica from Dragon Quest VIII. But no, the characters in this, I don't really play her that much, to be honest, but I love the characters in Trials of Mana. I love how, you know, if you choose certain characters, then the interactions are quite, like, different. I really like, I like the final boss in particular. Something about that final boss feels really epic to me. Even on the Final Fantasy Adventure's final boss is very cool. You fight basically in front of the Tree of Mana, or the Mana Tree, I should say. In the second game, you fight the Mana Beast, as I said, and that feels very epic. But in this one, you know, you go to the Mana Holy Land, you actually kind of walk around in it, and it's very different to how it is in Secret of Mana. And that music that plays, like, you know, the Sacrifice is the final battle music. I talk about the music a lot because I think it really is outstanding in the series. If you want, like, a good value for money action RPG collection on the Switch, you gotta get Collection of Mana. I'm sorry, if you haven't got it, get it. Go now. So another game that was announced at E3 2019, pretty much in tandem with Collection of Mana, and the same series and a remake, Trials of Mana, which was my most anticipated game of 2020, and it came out at a great time, basically right when the pandemic started, so it was a good way to keep busy. I didn't actually get around to playing this like immediately when it came out, although I did buy it at launch, simply because I'd played, you know, the translation of Seiken Densetsu 3 on the collection so soon, so close to this coming out. But I did play the demo a lot, and I did start up a game on this proper, and I basically almost failed university because of this. I played so much of it, you know, I had some work due and I was like neglecting it totally. And that's kind of a story of my life with the Switch. It's like games have come out at points and I've played them so much at different times, and it's kind of coincided with my kind of academic career, so the Switch has kind of screwed me up at a few times. But Trials of Mana, it's a 3D remake of Seiken Densetsu 3, you know, which got its first official English translation on that collection, very close to this coming out. It's basically the same thing, you know, it is exactly the same, I would say, just in 3D. And, you know, it's not the most kind of big budget 3D remake. It's certainly, in my opinion, I would say it's more impressive than the Secret of Mana remake that came out on the PS4. Simply because that just felt like too one-to-one. This at least tries to kind of realize it into a 3D world, and it does an excellent job. I think it nails kind of the whole Mana series vibe, the kind of vibrancy of it, and, you know, the distinctiveness of some of the characters, you know, like the Rabites and Flammy, obviously. You know, you can choose your heroes, like it says, so this kind of goes more into what you can do in Trials of Mana. I can't really add much else to this. I can say that, you know, for the amount of hype that I had for this, it was absolutely worth it. I was really supporting the Mana series with Collection of Mana and Trials of Mana buying these, and I hope to God that we get like a new proper Mana game. We did actually end up getting Legend of Mana, which I will have somewhere over here. Have I got my copy of Legend of Mana? Shit, I don't know where my copy of Legend of Mana went. But no, we've gotten a few Mana series things on the Switch, but I really hope we get like a brand new game, and I hope that it takes kind of more from Trials of Mana than Legend of Mana. You know, I know a lot of people are very kind of split on if they like that game or not, purely because of how kind of unorthodox the whole overworld system is. Actually, the guys, like a lot of the guys who worked on Legend of Mana, they did a mobile game called Egglia Rebirth, which came out pretty recently, which I bought, and I've still got to play that, but you know, that has the same visual style, the same kind of art style as Legend of Mana and Magical Star Sign and Magical Vacation. So now we move into 2020. I already talked about Dragon Quest XI, yeah. Okay, so we're into 2020. Man, it's true, like the years really do blur together. It does not feel like it's been 5 years already. But I've got a couple of games in 2020, to be honest. I know Trials of Mana was pretty much actually a 2020 game. Yeah, it came out in 2020, so it's a 2020 game. Animal Crossing, to be honest, I don't really, it's not my thing, although I know a lot of people say that it kind of like, it really saved their lives during the lockdown. But in 2020, it was kind of the year of me getting into limited run and kind of strictly limited games. And that's something that's really kind of stood out to me about the Switch, its business model. A lot of these new games don't necessarily get kind of a mainstream physical release, they get these limited releases, which, I mean, I don't know, I think some of these really do deserve proper physical releases. Or not proper, maybe that's the wrong word, kind of mainstream. They deserve more attention, they deserve way more love. But Panzer Dragoon, originally a Sega Saturn game, but it came out on the Switch, and I played a lot of it actually. I really enjoyed it. I was really looking forward to this. This was announced actually at E3 with these other games, and it was one of those things where I knew I was going to get it. It came out digitally, and it was a lot cheaper than this version, but I just felt like it really deserved it. And that's something I like too. Manuals. These limited games, I really like that they have manuals, because the Switch cases actually have space for manuals. But obviously, like I was showing you before, I used them for like receipts and Game Boy manuals and stuff. But yeah, I'm just looking at the artwork in that. It's not really artwork, it's a render, but I think it looks very nice. Man, I do love these Switch boxes, and I love stacking them and just having them, just looking at them on display. I think they just look really nice. God, I'm just I'm blown away by the beauty of this, just the beauty of these boxes. But anyway, Panzer Dragoon, you know, it's an on-the-rail shooter. The music is very nice. You can choose between the classic and remastered soundtracks. Visually, it's very nice too. I know a lot of people kind of think it looks a bit kind of cheapish, and I kind of see where they're coming from. It's a very short game. It's, you know, you can basically sit down and beat it in one sitting. But the meat of this game comes from replaying it on different difficulties and, you know, kind of trying to do better every single time. And I mean, would I recommend it to everyone? It kind of depends on like if you like this style of game, if you've played it already, or, you know, if you see some footage and you think it looks interesting, then yeah, by all means, give it a shot. This is my favorite game, or my favorite collection, I should say, of 2020. And that's something I'll say too. A lot of my games on the Switch are just collections, or re-releases of games from older consoles, which I don't mind, honestly. I think the Switch is a great kind of a hub, almost, for like games from a lot of different consoles, especially the PS1 and the Super Nintendo. But Darius Cosmic Collection console. I'm a big STG shoot-'em-up fan, like I've said. During the lockdown, I really committed to kind of 1cc'ing or beating a lot of games that, you know, I'd enjoyed in the past, but I wanted to get a bit more serious maybe, and I had the time to commit to that. So I got this game actually for Christmas in 2020, so it's more of a 2021 game for me. God, just look at that. That's so cool. And I swear this came with a manual, but I don't know where it's gone. No, it didn't. It came with the pin, which I actually do have. It came with a pin. But anyway, this has a lot of different games in it. It has the Mega Drive version of Darius 2 or Sigaya. It has a Darius Twin and Darius Force from the Super Nintendo. And then we have Darius Alpha and Darius Plus PC Engine games. Darius Alpha, actually, is one of those games that's really, really rare, the original version, because it was kind of, you had to apply to get it by mail, and there were only like 600 copies. There are 2,500 copies of this, so technically there are, you could say there's about 3,000 copies of Darius Alpha in the wild, and I have one of them, so kind of, I mean, not exactly, but I mean, is it worth it? Is it worth like the thousands of pounds maybe that I might go for? Probably not, because it's just a boss rush of the bosses from Darius Plus, so that's really all it is. But you know, I beat all these games actually. I beat every single game on this except Darius Alpha. I didn't get to the kind of the final bosses, but Darius 2 is the first one I beat. I remember I got this on Christmas Day, and I spent a big chunk of that Christmas Day just playing Darius 2. But no, Darius 2 I really immensely enjoy. Darius Twin, I would say, is very easy. It's a very easy shoot 'em up, but very fun, very fun. I love that you actually go to Darius in the final level, or you know, the final level it's Darius. I mean, you're not on the planet as such. You're still in space, but I just like that you go to Darius, you know. I really like Hyper Great Thing. I love the Great Thing theme in general from Darius, from all these Darius games. It's one of my favorite boss tracks ever. I just think it's so epic, you know. And the fight with Hyper Great Thing in Darius Twin is really cool because he's so huge, and you circle around him, which is nuts. Darius Force, I'm not a big fan of Darius Force, to be honest. One thing I don't like about it is the fact that, you know, in any other Darius game, if you die, you know, you come back where you died, so the game just continues. In this game, if you die, you start at the beginning, or you start at a certain point in the level, which I've never really been a fan of. I know like a bunch of games do that, but yeah, I'm not big on it. And another thing I don't like is how you alternate between different kind of auxiliary, like using the bombs or using kind of the diagonal lasers, whereas in other games, you know, what I like about Darius, you know, unlike kind of Nemesis or Gradius, where you kind of have the system of choosing whether you want the laser or kind of diagonal beams or whatever, in this, you just stack everything. So you get your power-ups for your missile, you get your power-ups for your shield, for your weapon, and it just successively kind of stacks up, and you get stronger and stronger, and you feel it, and you feel invincible. In Darius Force, you still kind of have to kind of think on, it's more involved, because you have to choose between what kind of beam you use at any time. So you will find if you play this game that you might get to a point and you might be playing with like the best strategy and you might be doing nothing wrong, but you just keep losing because you're not using the right beam. Or you could just be really good, like a Japanese player, and just be good with any beam. But Darius Force, I don't want to say I don't like it because it's too kind of challenging. I mean, I like the challenge. I beat this game. And to be honest, there are like the path system is very kind of different from normal Darius, where you know, you start at A, then you got an upper and a lower level, and then you've got like it just branches off. In this game, you can either go by, in Darius Force, you can go by the bottom path or the medium path or the kind of the hard top path, which is longer. So every path gets longer. It's very different. It does feel like a Darius game. But it just doesn't seem as fun. The music isn't as kind of, it doesn't get you as pumped up as in Darius Twin, although obviously I do like Zontata music. I wonder if the music in Darius Force is Zontata too. I guess it must be, right? But it does feel atypical, because that's one of the things about Darius that I've forgotten to mention, the fact that all the enemies, or the bosses, are pretty much themed after aquatic animals, like in all of them pretty much. But in Darius Force, you know, you have things based on like dinosaurs and kind of land animals too. It's a bit different. It's quite different. And Darius Plus is just it's kind of a port of the original Darius. You know, the thing about Darius that made it kind of unique in the arcades, I guess, you know, I'm just speaking from what I've seen, is the fact that it's multiple monitors, so it's kind of a wide screen. So the arcade collection for the Darius Cosmic Collection, it does actually have those games. Well, it has Darius and Darius 2 in the arcade kind of widescreen, which doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't really work on kind of a handheld screen, or even on a TV, they can't do it justice. It would work really well on like dual monitors on a PC actually. But Darius Plus, it's fun, you know, it's a pretty competent port of the original Darius. The music is fantastic. I just like it. I like these games. It's hard for me to talk about shoot 'em ups. I enjoy them. I enjoy the kind of style of these games. I enjoy kind of being kept on your toes. I find that it kind of changes my perception a bit when I'm really into one. Like, I'm more aware of my surroundings in general. So I just really like them. So Darius Cosmic Collection is my third most played game on the Switch. I put 75 hours into this, yes, so 75 hours into this collection, across kind of Darius 2, Darius Twin, Darius Force, and Darius Plus, those 4 games. So a lot of value for money. I mean, it depends on the kind of person, right? Because these are expensive being limited games and out of print now too, so if you really like shoot 'em ups, if you feel like you'd get your money's worth, then yeah, go for it. I will say at the time I had more time to play these games. I'm currently trying to 1cc Darius Gaiden. I get really close to the end, but right now I'm kind of struggling a bit. So now we get on to the 2021 games proper, and Skyward Sword HD is something I want to talk about because it's something that I had no expectations of going in. I was at the shops, I was just cycling around, getting some stuff, doing some errands, and it just happened to be the day that this came out. So I picked it up, I got home and I played it, and you know, I put 60 hours into this thing. I beat it like 100%. Right off the bat, I think it's a significant improvement over the original version that came out on the Wii. I think just purely by virtue of the controls. The controls are still a bit unorthodox. You can tell that they had to like work around some very unusual motion controls with how you move the Joy-Cons sometimes, and they don't quite feel as kind of straightforward as they should be at times, but they feel like a big improvement. The thing I really like about this, and I even have the receipt. I didn't realize I had that. But the thing I like the most are the dungeons. I think some of the dungeons in this game really stand out, have some really unique ideas. Like the Lanayru mines, the kind of the time stone mechanics, time shift stones. You know, like everything in like kind of the Lanayru, I think. Even the kind of the captain's ship, or you know, like that ship you go on, the kind of the ghost ship. That dungeon was really cool. I really like the Skykeep at the very end of this game, which feels like a classic Zelda dungeon because it has square rooms basically, and you mix and match the rooms to kind of get all the pieces of the Triforce, which is very cool. What I don't like is the hub world. So it's not like an interconnected world from the very start. You travel to kind of like Lanayru in the woods and Elden Volcano. You travel to these places from the hub world. And on the hub world, you can kind of do quests for other characters, and you kind of get kind of gratitude crystals, which you can use to unlock stuff. And I don't like it, to be honest. They get kind of grating sometimes. The side quest I liked doing the most was kind of like, you know, one of the shopkeepers is like this girl who's very kind of frigid at first, but you can like kind of get on her good books, so to speak. And that, I don't know, I just kind of enjoyed dicking around with that. The gratitude crystal stuff I didn't bother completing, I didn't really care that much. I think the hub world, some of the characters can get a bit grating. I don't like how you have to revisit the same areas so many times, and they don't really change all that much until like at the very end. I think the Elden Volcano quest, where it's kind of like you have to avoid being spotted, is very cool. And I like when kind of the forest gets kind of flooded. But, you know, it's not, I think that maybe came a little too late into the game. I think before that, you're kind of just going back and forth, and it gets a bit mundane, maybe. But being such an avid JRPG player, I'm used to a bit of repetition, so that doesn't really annoy me as much as other people. I would say, controversially, I do prefer this to Breath of the Wild. I had a great time with this, from start to finish. I really enjoyed figuring out how to beat Demise at the very end of the game, considering I haven't really played the original Wii one. Played it a little bit, but not much. I never got that far into the game, and you know, I try not to play with guides or anything, so when I got to that final boss, it was a bit of a creative process figuring out how he works. So when I realized you could kind of catch the lightning on your sword, that was pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, with Demise, I don't like that when he's in his kind of incomplete form, the way that you kind of seal him, like, repeatedly during the game, it feels that's kind of boring. It gets kind of more challenging later on in the game when he moves faster and you've got to, like, he can fly up kind of bits. But, you know, that stuff was kind of boring. The final boss really stood out to me, a lot of the dungeons kind of stood out to me. I think it's a very kind of vibrant, very colourful world. I like the skydiving minigame, weirdly enough. Yeah, it's a good game. Would I say it's my favorite Zelda? Nah, it's still Link's Awakening or Link to the Past. But yeah, if you like Zelda, the Switch is a great Zelda machine at this point. I mean, damn, you've got Breath of the Wild, soon to be Breath of the Wild 2, Link's Awakening HD. You've got, is it Link's Awakening HD or just Link's Awakening? Well, whatever, the remake. You've got Skyward Sword HD, you've got Ocarina of Time, I'm pretty sure you have Majora's Mask, but I don't have the N64 online. You got a lot of stuff to play with. I started a new job kind of middle to endish of 2021, and I bought a lot of games at bulk, and I basically went kind of crazy with my first paycheck. I pre-ordered the Switch OLED, I pre-ordered Metroid, because Jesus, I'm a big Metroid fan, I had to get that. When that was announced at E3, I mean, it was straight away, right, I've got to get that. I mean, I remember I bought like 3 or 4 games just in one lot, without thinking about my backlog at all. I mean, the limited time that I've got to play all these games. But man, this thing, the Switch OLED is just, it's incredible. I sound a bit like a shill here. This also, by the way, with regards to like the grills on the vent, this is very nice too. They feel a lot sturdier. So it seems like Nintendo really listens to me sometimes. And the kickstand, very cool. They clearly listen to people, although I never had problems with the original Switch's kickstand. The Joy-Cons, I mean, I've never had drift personally, but the Joy-Cons just look beautiful, these white Joy-Cons. I mean, if I could have bought them individually, I probably would have. It's amazing how much of a difference removing the bezel from a Switch makes. This feels so much sleeker, and it looks so much nicer than the original Switch now. I think the original kind of looks a bit like a toy in comparison to this. And the screen is just fantastic. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I have a Vita, like the original Vita with the OLED screen. I've hacked it, and you know, I play all my PS1 and stuff, games on that, and I love that screen. But that was really one of the reasons why, you know, a game like Final Fantasy VII, let's say, one of the reasons why I'd play that on my Vita over my Switch, even though, you know, I have the Switch version of that, and I even have a PS1, so I can play it on that. One of the reasons why I'd play that game on the Vita would be because of the screen. But now that the Switch has basically come out with a pretty big competitor to that, you know, with a massive screen too, it's a very big one, and a gorgeous, vibrant looking screen, I kind of don't see a reason to go back to my Vita now, especially since a lot of those games, PS1 games, are coming to the Switch. This is basically the PS1 too, in a way. But Christ, I love this, and this is another console that I pre-ordered just for one game. I got this for Metroid Dread. I really wanted to play that game on this, and I also know that these models have improved battery life, and my old Switch is kind of, you know, with some of these newer games, it struggles a bit. Sometimes it struggles to last longer than a few hours at a time, whereas this is a beast right now. Touch wood. Got a bit of wood there, so I touched it. But let's start. So, Cruisin' Blast. It's a racing game. It's part of the Cruisin' series, which has been a mainstay of Nintendo for a while, I would say, even though maybe not everyone's played like Cruisin' USA and whatnot. But fantastic game. I'll say it's a bit buggy sometimes. I 100% completed this game. It took about 10 hours, so it actually didn't take very long. The music is kind of, not very many tracks, but it's kind of classic racing game music. It gets you pumped enough. I think the menu music is really annoying when she's just like singing like cruising, just like constantly. That gets a bit annoying, a bit grating maybe. The levels are really cool. They get very creative. The tracks do repeat a lot, but you know, you have like UFO themed stuff, like kind of sci-fi stuff with UFOs attacking the level constantly. You have like I'm a big fan of like neon aesthetics in racing games, so this has plenty of like neon looking levels. Has like dinosaurs and stuff. You can drive some pretty ridiculous stuff. You can basically be like a T-Rex. You can be like a flying saucer. You can be like helicopters, which aren't like unusual, but I mean, it's like a car racing game. Why would you want to be a helicopter? So I unlocked all those. I unlocked all the vehicles actually. I got all the keys. I remember one of the keys I had a lot of trouble with because it was kind of glitched out. Like, you had to use like the biggest vehicle, and you had to like go off a ledge in a certain way that you would have like a 1 in 50 chance or something of getting this key. It was nuts. But yeah, a pretty short game. I think they are adding online, or online's been added to this already. I didn't really, once I beat this, I kind of dropped it. But if there's online, that's the one thing I felt about this, that it was lacking, really lacking in online. Because if it had that, it would be way more kind of active, the community for this, I feel. Because, you know, Mario Kart is a racing game, right? But it's a party game, first and foremost, I feel. And in the same way, I feel like, you know, games like Fast RMX that I talked about before, and these are kind of like proper racing games. I think for people who like to get technical about this stuff, you know, you can get pretty technical with kind of the upgrades in Cruis'n USA. I think they will appreciate games like this. Maybe a bit more than Mario Kart, where you can customize a lot and you can get pretty technical. But I've always felt that with Mario Kart, once you get the hang of like boosting and how to use items and whatnot, you can basically cheese it. Oh man, the big one, Metroid Dread. This is a game that, well, you know, I was sick a few days off work, so in those days where I was sick, let's say, I mean, I was sick, I spent a lot of time playing this game. I played a lot of this, and I'm so glad that I pre-ordered it with that first paycheck, because I put at least 50 hours into this. I beat it multiple times, you know, constantly trying to one-up myself, get a quicker time in hard mode. I think I got to like less than 3 hours, or around 3 hours. I'll put an image of it up here. And I know they've just done an update and they've added Dread mode, so I'm debating if I want to go back and try that out. But man, Metroid Dread, if you're a Metroid fan, I think this is, Mercury Steam really listened to a lot of the fans after Samus Returns. It's not quite as like, it's weird. It's like, it feels like a cross between Fusion and Super Metroid. It's not like perfectly kind of, it's not totally non-linear. You know, you can do sequence breaks and stuff, and some of them in fact even have like unique animations when you do them. Like with Kraid, you know, if you use the power bomb and you like go straight through him, that's like kind of an intended sequence break, which, if it's intended, is it really a sequence break? So the map gives you kind of the illusion that it is non-linear, when in fact it is. It kind of guides you. It subtly gives you hints. It doesn't tell you, you know, like in Metroid Fusion, you have Adam telling you go here, go here. In this game, there's no one telling you. Adam is in this game, obviously, because it is a sequel to Fusion, which, man, I find that amazing. That's so hard to believe that we got a real sequel to Fusion. You have Adam, but they clearly listened to fans, because he's not telling you exactly what to do. And also, there are some kind of spoilerish elements to Adam. He's not quite all there, let's just say. The world is really cool. I think one of the problems I had at the start was it felt very kind of, the world felt maybe a bit kind of monotone in terms of like vibrancy and color. Like, you know, Fusion is kind of a very colorful game. Super Metroid has a lot of different environments, like the wrecked ship, and, you know, going down the world of Zebes, or like Zebes. Zebes, I would call it Zebes. I forget, ZDR. ZDR is the name of this planet. So it's not SR388 as it was in Metroid 2 and Samus Returns. This is a whole new world, and you basically, instead of like going down this world, you go up the world. So when you fight the final boss, you're fighting in the sky, which is actually, that's quite cool. I quite like stuff like that. Man, I really like how Samus's new power suit looks. I like, you know, it feels like a blend of kind of the organic elements of the Fusion suit, but also kind of regaining some of the mechanical, classic power suit feel. And you don't spend enough time with this normal power suit. You know, by the time you get the Varia suit and you get the gravity suit, it kind of sucks. And then, of course, you get a final suit at the end of the game temporarily, which looks badass. I hope we see that again. In fact, I just really hope this story continues. But man, you know, I think it says a lot that, you know, when I like come back from work, I'm pretty tired and I don't really have as much time to game nowadays. But with this, it was like I wanted to come back all day. I was just thinking about when I'm sitting at my desk, I want to go home and play Metroid. And that's what I did for a very long time, at least like a month. Or maybe if like 3 weeks at least, I was playing this just non-stop, like every single day. And I've still got the receipt for this as well. I like the cool kind of polygon vector render of Samus's suit there. But God, Metroid Dread, game of 2021, man, game of the year. God, it kind of leaves me speechless a bit. I really like the Emmy sequences, yes. So originally, when I first played this game, it took me about 15 hours to beat it, which is pretty long, I would say, 15 to 20 hours, 100%ing it, of course. Just because I didn't know how to approach the Emmy sections. What I was trying to do, and this is some advice I will give players playing this game, if you maybe fall into this kind of trap too. I'm a big kind of exploration guy, so I like to kind of clear every kind of square on the map, which, you know, in my successive playthroughs when I was going for like sub 3 hours, I wasn't doing, or like around 3 hours, because I feel like I might not be sub 3 hour yet. What I was trying to do is during those sequences where, or during those parts of the game where the Emmy sections weren't like liberated yet, or like free roam, and you still had to worry about the Emmys, I was trying to do all that exploration, which added a lot of time. So I will say that to players who are maybe troubled by that too and want to bring down their time a bit. Also, memorize the map. Like, I will say that if you beat this game and you want to get better, just play it again, keep playing, and you will get better. You'll notice it too, which I really like. A game that came out at the end of 2021, it was kind of between this and Pokemon Shining Pearl and Brilliant Diamond, which one I wanted to kind of commit to. I will be honest and say that, you know, because of kind of the nostalgia element, I kind of invested a bit more in Pokemon, and I got very bored of it. It's maybe a bit too simplistic for my taste nowadays, but Shin Megami Tensei 5 is something I really want to go back and commit to fully, and damn, this is good. This was worth the wait. This is just a classic, challenging JRPG in this kind of day and age where, you know, like Dragon Quest XI gives you the Draconian mode, or Draconian Quest kind of settings where you can make it very kind of old school difficult. This game, just from the very get-go, it feels like a proper, like, difficult JRPG where even grinding is not enough, right? You have to be very strategic with how you approach this. And it looks great. It looks fantastic on the Switch. Maybe some minor, like, frame rate issues, but on the OLED it looks brilliant, and the battery life is superb. I would say that this might be one of those games which, you know, with Shin Megami Tensei games, I notice, they kind of do get very expensive after the fact, so I would say that if you're on the fence about getting this, I would probably rather just get it and have it to play in the future rather than waiting, because I'm even seeing it with stuff like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, now that they've announced Xenoblade 3, but even before that, that was getting really expensive. But yeah, Shin or Megaten 5, fantastic game as far as I've played it so far. I hope it maintains that kind of level of quality, and I hope to beat it soon, to be honest. So now I'll touch on a few games, like, briefly, that I did really enjoy my time with, and maybe don't have as much to say about. Doom on the Switch I really enjoyed when it came out. That was another thing that almost made me fail some of my university a bit, because I was playing the online so much. I think that was a cloud game. Yeah, it's a cloud game on the Switch, so you have to, like, install, like, a lot of stuff when you first put it in. That kind of put me off a bit at the start, because it took me like 8 hours to install some of the stuff when I first got that game. Mario Odyssey is a game that I also bought around the time it came out, and to be honest, that kind of didn't live up to my expectations so much. I don't know, man, it's like, even 3D Zelda, 3D Mario too, isn't quite my cup of tea. I'm a big fan of those 2D platform Marios. Streets of Rage 4, classic arcade beat 'em up, can't really go wrong with it. These guys, .emu, they're working on a lot of stuff too. I think they also did Windjammers 2, which came out pretty recently, which is pretty nuts. This even has some music from, you know, Yuzo Koshiro, which is awesome. And visually, I really like it. I like how much you can unlock. I like that you can, you know, there's so much, like, hidden stuff to do. The fact that you can, like, you know, put a tase, like arcade machines, and then go into, like, a 2D version, you know, like the classic kind of Mega Drive or Genesis kind of, or kind of arcade style, if you want to say. I like that you can unlock, like, you know, those classic versions, or like classic sprites of the characters, because a lot of them are returning. In fact, I think you can pretty much play as almost every character from prior Streets of Rage games. I think they've added more updates and stuff. It's a very challenging game. I will say you kind of have to be persistent, you kind of have to not give up, but when you beat it, you know, it's very rewarding. And yeah, I feel like I should probably play it more, honestly, but it's just like, time is such a limited commodity, you know, like, you can't kind of fixate on one game too much at any time. But yeah, Streets of Rage 4, if you're an arcade guy, you will really like this. This is another game that's really, like, value for money for what it is, Mega Drive Classics. So, I was talking about Phantasy Star before, and this has Phantasy Star 2, 3, and 4, so you can play the whole series on the Switch. It has another great action RPG, Landstalker, which is like an isometric view game, which does not get enough love, I think. That game is seriously underappreciated. You know, what else? is on this that I would say really stands out. I really like Ristar, or Ristar actually. It was something that I wasn't really familiar with before I played this collection, but I had a good time with that actually. But yeah, I like the kind of the GUI, the kind of how you're in like a room and you've got an old CRT and you got your Mega Drive hooked up there and you can put the cartridges in. I think that's kind of fun. But yeah, it's a good collection, although I'm really confused. Why are Nintendo like committing to this Mega Drive Online or Genesis Online when they've already got this, and they have like Sega Ages releases too? It seems a bit redundant to me. I don't know. Mega Man Zero ZX Collection. God, Mega Man Zero on the Game Boy Advance is a game that I played a very long time ago. I was terrible at it. I tried playing this when it came out. I want to support the Mega Man series because I know people love these games, and the lore of the Mega Man Zero games and ZX games is very like in-depth, I know. But this is a really good collection. A lot of love has been put into this collection. These are not emulation, I believe. I believe it's all source ports. So they've taken the source code and kind of translated it into a Switch collection. There's a lot of unlockables, a lot of like things to do. There's an easy mode for me, which I should maybe try, to be honest. I think I gotta suck up my pride and try that. To be honest, the reason why I think I do bad is because it is kind of a tricky game. You've got to memorize patterns a lot, but also it has a ranking system. And now when things have ranking systems and when they lock things behind ranking systems, that really kind of grinds my gears a bit, because it kind of gets me riled up and wanting to like be a perfectionist a bit. So I put a lot of time into this, but I didn't actually beat even the first Mega Man Zero. I got like close, but didn't beat it, just because I kept trying to get like a high rank. But yeah. This is great games. They are solid games, I will say that. And for the Dragon Quest fans, you know, we don't have the 2D HD remake of Dragon Quest 3 yet. We don't have the offline version of Dragon Quest 10 either, but we do have, besides 11, this kind of collection of 1, 2, and 3. They're not really the same as, you know, what we got on the 3DS in Japan. They got Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3 as well. They're not the Super Famicom remakes either. They are just these, I guess they're kind of the mobile remakes. But I played through 1 fully. You know, I've already played through all these games before. But last year I did play Dragon Quest 1 again, because it's very replayable. It's a very short game, you know. You know, by the time you get to the Dragon Lord, you're basically like level 25-ish at the max, and it only takes about 5 to 10 hours. Legitimately, you know, I think 5 hours might be a bit low. But if you really sped through, then I think you probably could. But 10 hours at least. It's a very short classic JRPG. Kind of the beginning in a lot of ways for JRPGs too. It spawned this whole series, which has been a ridiculous success in Japan and still is to this day. It's a mainstay of that kind of gaming culture, I would say. It's a franchise, you know, that hasn't maybe had the appreciation that it deserves in the West, although I think it's getting better actually. You know, with Dragon Quest 11, I think they promoted it a bit better than they usually do for Dragon Quest games, and it seems like it was quite a hit with a lot of people who might not have played it otherwise. You know, I had a friend who I don't really think he's much of a JRPG player, but he was talking to me last year when we met up in the summer about how much he enjoyed 11, so I think that's a real testament. You know, it's brought a lot of new fans to the series for sure. I really hope we get 4, 5, and 6. If anything, I would really hope we get maybe the DS versions, the DS remakes, but like figure out how to kind of, wow, you know what, actually they would be pretty easy to do, because the top screen is basically just an extension of the bottom screen for those games for the most part. So I would really like to see kind of 4, 5, and 6, which, you know, are kind of in a way that original 2D HD style. I feel like you know, like Octopath and Triangle Strategy, which came out yesterday as of recording this, and the upcoming Dragon Quest 3 remake, and Live Alive, which is coming soon, which I'm really looking forward to. I think those, or the PS1 remake of 4, and Dragon Quest 7, and then 4, 5, and 6 on the DS, which kind of use the same engine, I believe. I think they're kind of the precursor to this kind of big 2D HD craze, so, you know, Dragon Quest potentially kind of trend-setting once again. But anyway, to get back to 1, 2, and 3, solid collection. I mean, if you want a physical collection, look, like, if you have an NES and you want to get the original versions, great, but they might be expensive. Super Famicom versions, you're gonna have to get like a fan, you're gonna have to get the ROMs fan translated, or like a kind of repro card. The Game Boy 1+2, or Dragon Warrior 3 on the Game Boy, very expensive now. So this is probably your best bet if you want a physical copy of these games. Even though I guess they're not really on the cartridge, these Switch games are a bit confusing. You don't even save on the cartridges anymore, man. It's just like the Vita, really. I know a lot of Vita games also didn't save on the cartridge. That it is what it is. So I'll talk about one more new game that I played recently. It came out like in January. I had no expectations for this because I've been burnt by this series since its 3DS games, and that is Pokemon Legends Arceus, or Arceus, I should say. We always said Arceus as kids, so Arceus sounds very weird to me. But, you know, it's a new take on a Pokemon game. It's not the old formula, and I really appreciate that. I played about 5 hours, so not like much at all. But I've had a blast, actually. I've been really surprised. To be honest, I think there are kind of games that are more my speed that I want to play more, so I'll probably like put this on the shelf again for now. But I will say that I really appreciate what they've tried to do. The music so far has been very kind of nostalgic. It has a very kind of feudal Japan kind of vibe to it, obviously because it is a time travel story too. The world, maybe, you know, as far as I've seen it, it seems like kind of typical open world fare, but I like how you initiate the battles. I really like the wild battles in this. The music is I was gonna use an expletive, but the music is fantastic. Kind of how kind of unorthodox the wild battle music sounds. It reminds me of kind of the Chrono Cross main battle theme. Chrono Cross also coming to the Switch, which I'm very much looking forward to. But Pokemon Legends Arceus, or Arceus. As far as I've played it, it seems like kind of reminds me more of Monster Hunter than Pokemon, really. In terms of how it's kind of quest based too. You go out on expeditions and you catch a certain number or achieve like Pokedex objectives, then you go back and report those, and that's how you get your money, because there aren't really that many trainer battles in this, which is kind of a bummer, even though I know they've just done an update which has added a few more. But yeah, if you're a fan of Pokemon as a concept, I think Pokemon is just an amazing concept. I don't think it's really lived up to that concept in recent years because the development cycle is so kind of rapid and they don't get the time to work on these games and flesh them out fully. X and Y felt super unfinished at the time, and I put like 300 hours into Y. Sun and Moon even felt very unfinished, and I think it's simply because the Pokemon games used to be 2D, at least in Gen 4 and Gen 5 they were 2.5D, but they were still 2D games, and I feel like developing games in kind of 2D is, I wouldn't say easier, but I would say it's maybe easier to flesh things out a bit more, whereas in 3D you're suddenly subject to a lot more scrutiny in terms of the graphics and kind of the performance. X and Y had ridiculous like frame drop in some of the battles. It was a real issue. And even Sun and Moon, like the multi-battles, my 3DS could not process the multi-battles at all. It would just chug like a steam train. But yeah, Pokemon Legends, it seems like an improvement. So far, no performance issues either, and maybe one day I will beat this. It's not a priority for me right now, but as a Pokemon fan, I would still call myself a fan of Pokemon. It felt like kind of a return to form. It felt like it had that kind of classic Game Freak quality to it. You know, it felt like... I don't know about consistency, because I can't speak, because I haven't played Sword and Shield, and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon and all that, but it feels like a kind of a return to form in a way. So right, we're pretty much at the end of this video because I've gone on for way too long. There is a lot of games that I haven't gone through. I mean, Digimon Cyber Sleuth, I love Digimon, Pokemon, Final Fantasy, Grandia HD, Darius Cosmic Revelation, Stormwind DX, kind of new shoot 'em up actually that I found out about by total chance. But man, you know, the Switch 5 years on, what do I think? I think it's a very diverse system. I would say that a big chunk of my games are games that are ports or remasters or collections, and I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think if I'm playing those games, then a lot of people will also be playing those who are being exposed to these kinds of classic experiences for the first time. I know I am for sure. And in a way, it's like an archive. It's like a kind of an archive of games from many different consoles to Switch, but physical releases too. I would say most people prefer physical copies, having a tangible kind of memento of an experience. To me, games are not just simply games. They've always been a lot more. They've inspired me creatively, and they're experiences too. So having that box of, you know, that I can look at this box of Cruise and Blast, and, you know, if I had the receipt, which I don't, I think it's in one of my other games, but, you know, I can look at this box and I can think about the kind of the times I had playing this game. It's really important to me because in those 5 years, my life has changed too. I've changed a lot over 5 years, and equally the Switch has changed too. I wouldn't have believed back in 2017 that I'd be playing so many JRPGs on the Switch. I mean, I knew that would come eventually, but I didn't realize it would kind of happen so fast and kind of so much volume in the time that it did. I remember when it came out, it was pretty much just Xenoblade 2, right? And man, I'm just looking at these games, and predominantly JRPGs. I would say the Switch is a fantastic JRPG system. For JRPGs, it might very well be my favorite. I would say the Switch, the PS1, and the Super Nintendo or Super Famicom, like the trifecta of JRPGs. In terms of other kind of styles of games, shoot 'em up fans, I think will really enjoy the Switch. I don't have every shoot 'em up game on the Switch, admittedly. A lot of them are also quite expensive. There are some that I really want that my backlog just won't permit me to get, my own conscience. But, you know, shoot 'em ups, also arcade fans are eating good with the Switch. There's a lot to kind of dig your teeth into, and the stuff coming up too, there's a lot of games to look forward to. What do I want in the future? I want more JRPGs, more shoot 'em ups, potentially new hardware if they do that. I can't see how they can kind of improve on the OLED, besides like a Switch Pro home console, which I would be inclined not to buy, I will say, because it's not a draw for me. Like, kind of docking it is not a draw. I've always been a handheld gamer from kind of my beginning to now, predominantly like 99% handheld. But man, any other thoughts? No, not really. I've just had a lot of good times with the Switch, and I hope that those good times continue to come for hopefully 5 years to come. I know they have the 10-year plan, or maybe even beyond. But it's a console that I did not have any expectations of going into. I didn't want it, and look at me now. I have just stacks and stacks of games, and that stack is probably only going to get bigger as I buy more stuff that I realistically can't keep up with. Even in this month, March 2022, so Triangle Strategy is something I have to play. Kirby's coming out. I have like a whole list of stuff that I want to check out that I'm probably not going to get around to. Also, I kind of got to protect my wallet a bit. My wallet's in a dire state right now with all these new releases. But yeah, I hope that this video has been entertaining in some way. I hope you can kind of relate maybe to some of these stories, or if you have any like particular stories yourself of playing with the Switch and having any experiences, then feel free to put them in the comments and I'll read them. If you want to discuss anything, then I'm game to do that too, because there's really a lot I could go into with the Switch. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in another video sometime soon. Peace.